Some of my strongest aha moments from this podcast come from just living my real life. And today's episode is rooted in one of those moments. If you're a regular listener, you know I start most of my days by journaling over a cup of coffee. And today was no different. I started off by kind of recapping what I had done yesterday, and the realization that came as a result of this journaling and this kind of, evaluating what I was writing down and why led me to an aha moment, and I want to share it with you. So thanks for joining me today. My name is Virginia, and this is Living on the Verge. I really think that these are the kinds of moments that lead to realization and change and forgiveness. And so let me just jump in and explain what happened. Yesterday, I had kind of a renewed sense of, okay, I'm done vacationing. I'm done having a good time. I'm done being sick. I'm done with all of the outlying responsibilities. And so it's back to normal. It's time to open the mail and pay the bills and balance your checking account and do all of those regular things that we kind of either do normally or take for granted and just expect that it becomes part of our life. But what I have uncovered is that if you don't make time for this because you're having so much fun traveling, etc., then it also becomes another daunting, incomplete task that is on your list. And so in the spirit of kind of getting my act together, I made a list of things that I wanted to get accomplished in my office, starting off with just being able to see my desk. And I say that lightly because, take it for what it's worth. The desk wasn't really that disastrous, but to my degree of, to the level at which I hold myself accountable, I guess is a better way to say it, I had fallen way short of the standard. And so I dug in yesterday. I sat at my desk all day. I cleared all the mail. I shredded 2 bags worth of stuff, which is a lot because I have a big shredder. I didn't yet tackle the closet, but I was able to clear off all of the things that had been sitting on my little side table. I was organizing returns, so I have a little stack of things that need to be done. And it occurred to me that I was starting to build kind of a get her done day, for lack of a better term. And what that meant to me was I was going to get a lot of shit taken off of my to-do list today. And so to give you an idea of what kind of things those were, it was in my office specifically, open mail, go through receipts, enter them into my software program so that I could later balance my checkbook and start to work towards this budget that I've talked about before that I am kind of trying to fine tune as I go through and document what my monthly outgoing expenses are. I'm also trying to trim some of those things and cut back on unnecessary subscriptions and kind of handle it as one big task, but with a lot of little subtasks to get done. And so that was the kind of day yesterday was. But before I even came into the office, I got a lot done. I got vacuuming done. I cleaned up the kitchen. I straightened up my bedroom and finished putting away the last of the things that I had lingering around from all of my travel. And I went to the gym and I had a really good workout. And so I felt accomplished and I felt empowered to have a really successful day. And I got through the day. I got done. By the time I got done, it was after 5 o'clock, which was reminiscent of my, brokerage days where I worked from 6 a.m. to 5 p.m., sometimes 6 p.m., and barely remembered to get up and have lunch. And so I had some moments yesterday where my husband had to run an errand and he called and he said, "Hey, honey, I'm passing by that burrito place we used to go to. Would you like me to bring a burrito?" And without even thinking about it, I said, "No, I have food here. Thank you very much." Because it's kind of, I'm tired of eating, food on vacation, eating out, catching food on the fly. I am actually very at peace with my decision to eat home and eat healthy and eat clean. So it was really easy for me to say no in that moment. And I got right back to the work I was doing in the office, not just the paperwork, but the one big daunting task that I had was this one podcast that I did on location that I had to splice together and edit and come up with the finished product. And it had been kind of hanging over my head, but I had gotten sick and I didn't finish it. And so I finally got that done. And I was feeling pretty proud of not just sticking to it and getting it done, but the actual quality of the episode that I had put out. I was really proud of what I had accomplished. I thought the content was great. And I kind of thought, you know what? I'm not half bad at this. And so I felt really accomplished. And I really was happy that I was able to kind of make some progress. But it came to 5 o'clock and it was time for me to make dinner. And I realized, wow, there's like 2 or 3 more things that I would really like to get done to kind of build on this momentum. But I've been sitting here for, probably 9.5, 10 hours at this point. So I should probably just count my wins and move on. And I realized that I was really kind of not giving myself the credit that I deserved for the accomplishments I had achieved. And I was able to do that by reflecting on some other things that had been going on, including the podcast episode that I was editing that had a big through line in patience. And I realized that maybe I wasn't being patient with myself and that maybe I was causing myself, I guess, my own struggle because of how I was processing things. And so I'm going to get into it and explain what I mean by all of this, because essentially what I came up with was the fact that I am really hard on myself. And that is the important realization that's underneath everything that I journaled about. I started to write things and I realized that I was, really kind of not allowing myself the grace that I deserved for everything I got accomplished. In reading it back, and I rarely read back my journals the same day, but something prompted me to do so. And in reading it back, I realized that I was kind of handling things like, I got 3 things done today, but why not 5? Even though it was 2 more than I got done yesterday. That kind of nothing is ever good enough feeling. And it kept me reading and it kept me evaluating what I had journaled, only to find that my stress is no longer coming primarily from lack of effort. And in fact, it may never have, because I try hard every day. But in fact, it's coming from an inability to emotionally register completion. To give myself permission to say, "Atta girl, you got it done." Because when I read the journal, what I see is you had 2 more credit cards to reconcile, and had you gotten done, you would have felt better. You could have gotten your social media work done, and then everything for that podcast episode would have been complete. You went to the gym, but you did not go for a walk. And yeah, you had your 100 grams of protein, but you didn't do it within the first 30 to 45 minutes of waking up like you're supposed to start your day off with. And it made me realize that I wasn't in the middle of what was a failed day. In fact, I had had a deeply functional day. But my nervous system seemed to interpret it as these unfinished items equal danger signals, equal I'm a failure. So instead of my mind saying, look how much you got done, my brain says, look how much still remains to be done. And honestly, once that happens, it doesn't matter what you accomplish, you're never going to feel as if you have succeeded. Because in that moment, I didn't feel better or like I accomplished much. Instead, I felt like, oh my gosh, I'm so behind. I need to keep going. If only I could work for another hour. When I look back at it now, it's easy for me to see that I could have worked for another 4 hours and there would have still been things left on my list that gave me that unfinished feeling. But I felt so behind, I needed to keep going. And what I interpreted as laziness or lack of discipline or failure is in fact a system, my system, which I have calibrated toward this eternal, perpetual forward motion. In other words, I can't just stop and feel accomplished in the moment. I have to keep moving forward. And I think it stems back, honestly, to what served me over the past few decades, because that put one foot in front of the other attitude had served me well for decades. It helped me raise my kids. It helped me run businesses, manage my home, handle the logistics of my life, always show up for everyone. It helped me survive very stressful seasons of life, and it helped me keep my life moving. But now, and more recently, the cost of this perpetual forward motion is becoming more visible because I'm starting to realize I cannot fully feel progress, because any progress that I make, my mind instantly converts into, here are the remaining obligations that you have. And recently, I've started to question why that is. So instead of basking in a moment of accomplishment, and instead of seeing everything I did get done, when I reviewed my day yesterday, all I saw were the things that weren't crossed off. And that means that all of the good choices I made all day, I had theoretically erased from my mind. I had minimized the fact that I had gone back to the gym and had a really successful and invigorating workout. I had lost sight of the fact that I had accomplished all of these tasks in the office, including putting out a really dynamic podcast episode that I was really proud of. Instead, I focused on, I didn't cross off the walk. I went to the gym, but I didn't walk and go to the gym. And instead, I chose to focus on what was unfinished on the list. And just the fact, in retrospect, that I was able to be aware of the fact that I was noticing what wasn't done more than what was done made me reflect on the fact that I had grown a little bit, because some of these reflections were showing growth and forward movement. And had I not slowed down to notice them, I probably would have instead just kept on beating myself up about the 3 out of 52 things on the list that I didn't cross out. And along those same lines, there was a couple of lines in my journal about the impending forever home versus staying here. And really what I came back to in the whole thing was that I had put a lot of pressure on myself over what I think is supposed to happen at this point in my life, as opposed to just looking around and seeing all of the beauty and fantasticness that is, in fact, my life. and the fact that we have a lovely home and I'm comfortable and I'm happy here. And why not focus on that instead of what I think I'm supposed to be doing or how much time I have left before this or that door closes? And to me, that's more important because it suggests to me that my clarity isn't coming through big dramatic breakthroughs. It's coming quietly through reflection and listening to myself and through a reduction of the internal friction. And at one point I wrote, I just want to be less hard on myself. And it occurs to me that this, in fact, might be the central theme underneath what's going on right now. Maybe closing down my business and retiring has made me not feel productive anymore. And maybe it's not that I wasn't all up to date on all my finances or that I don't have a perfect structure in my day-to-day life, but it's learning how to exist in this new version of my life where, let's face it, you guys, the list never fully ends. And maybe it's just learning to not interpret that as a personal failure, right? How about if we just take it a little bit easier on ourselves? I've talked about this before. What if we were just a little kinder to ourselves? And it occurred to me that instead of making this a big, overwhelming, daunting task, maybe I break it down into a few days where I just set my mind to go run errands, go get my real ID because, okay, I admit it, it's time, I need to get it done. And who likes going to the DMV? But if I do that all in one day along with all of the other errands, then at least I've kind of, I don't know, strategically placed all of the have to do's in one box, and then I get to close the box and be done with it. And I realize that this is probably something that other people can relate to, which is why I'm sharing it all with you, because I think it's important to have a framework to your life, but this has to be incredibly common, right? I can't be the only one who has mental cycling going through my brain constantly. I have to do this and I have to do that. The interruptions in the middle of one thought. And maybe the inability to fully relax and rest because open loops keep buzzing around in your mind. And why is it that sometimes we feel that we have to finish in order to be complete, when in fact, life is maintenance? There are no real finish lines, right? When you're finished, then it's over. And honestly, I really feel like that was a huge aha moment for me. And I think that it's very significant that I was able to arrive at this emotional reflection right around the same time that I started to see some clarity in the accomplishments that I was achieving. And so I had a little shift in my thinking. Instead of thinking, I'm overwhelmed, I can't seem to get anything done, I just made a small shift. And I asked myself, why do I still feel behind even when I'm getting things done? And it changed kind of the way I thought about it. Because for us women who were productive for decades and managed households and worked and parented and carried invisible labor and built identities around handling things, getting things done, it was never a lack of effort. But the current day problem is the inability to emotionally register completion. I'm done. I succeeded. And when I look at it that way, it shifts the whole lens. I went to the gym. I made a beautiful, healthy dinner. I turned down unhealthy takeout and instead had a healthy lunch at home. I had a successful, accomplished day in my office and got a bunch of stuff done. I published a major episode that I'm really proud of. I balance bank accounts and have a very much clearer understanding of my finances. And yet, at the end of yesterday, I still emotionally experienced the day as I didn't do enough. But today, after reviewing everything and understanding what had really taken place yesterday, I realized that it was more than enough. And that by changing my way of looking at it, I didn't have to feel depleted and unaccomplished and unsuccessful. In fact, I realized that I just don't know how to emotionally register completion anymore. And if I could just master that, I would be okay. My brain automatically converts progress into remaining obligation. And the list isn't the problem, because without the list, then your mind starts going through those infinite loops of what do I need to get done today? But it made me realize that I don't want to spend my life rushing through the responsibilities so I can finally feel that I've earned relaxation. And so maybe the issue isn't that I'm behind at all. Maybe what it is that I am not allowing myself permission to know what enough feels like anymore. Maybe it's as simple as that. And that struck me so much that I realized, you know what? This is worth sharing with people. So if you're in a season where you are adjusting and calibrating and trying to get to know who the new you is in real time, maybe the takeaway is to go easier on yourself. And after taking the time to process all of this, I have a completely different view of today. I am going to get a couple of things done in the office. I am going to spend the afternoon and evening with my grandson. I'm going to allow myself to enjoy that time and not worry about things that I'm not getting done. And I'm going to continue to build my list so that things don't run around in my head. But I am not going to use that list as a measure of my success. Crossing things off on a list will no longer be the way I measure my success. Instead, I intend to reflect back on the day and ask myself, did I leave today better than I found it? And did I take some time to enjoy today? I think if I could do those two things, I'm going to start to give myself a break a lot more often than not. And I'm going to start to really learn to feel the sense of accomplishment that I deserve to feel, that you deserve to feel, that we all deserve to feel. I don't know if this one resonated with you today, but I just really felt compelled to get on here and share because it really felt important to do so. So I hope you took something away from this today, and I really appreciate you spending the time with me. I'll be back very soon, and until then, I'll be right here, living on the verge.